African American in America, it's a little hard to kind of define where we are. Where's our community? You know what I mean? Suddenly I'm walking down the streets of my city and I don't see anybody who look like me, and I think, man, I'm a long way from home. You know, you get on a train to go home, and when you start, 75% of people on the train is black, and by the time you get where you're going, you got no black people left on the train. And so we're always sort of balancing these things and trying to be normal, but it's a weird kind of existence. And so I thought this film sort of explored a little bit of that, at least attempted to. So.
And then we met Ernie at a film festival. And we were in Calabasas at a film festival, Steve and I, with another film we did. It was a short. And I'm listening to Ernie speak. He was at a podium, he's speaking, and I simply leaned over to Steve and I said, because the name of the character is Marcus Wells, I go, that's Marcus Wells. That's him. That's him. And he goes, yeah. So the after party, we cornered this dude. We cornered him. And, Steve, you could talk more.
Well, the guy, Ernie's pretty famous, so people like to talk to him. So I noticed I was waiting for my moment, and this young man said, well, what are you up to next? He said, I'm just waiting for the next opportunity. It's an interesting opportunity. I said, well, I'm Steve Wardauer. This is Phil Donlin. We'd like to talk to you. So for the next half an hour, we're in the middle of some sort of Maserati dealership, because it was a whole big deal, and the musicals, it was like a party. So, but I basically stared everybody down who dared to come close to us while Phil pitched Ernie the story for the next half an hour. And then midway through, this beautiful woman comes, she's like, oh, this is my wife, who happens to be white. We're just looking at each other oh, this is interesting. And he was really engaged. So Phil's talking really close to him, so that Ernie could actually hear in the midst of all this music. And I coined a phrase that night. It's called conversation interruptus. And that's basically what I did. And the next day or two, we met with Ernie, and Ernie went and talked for about 5-10 minutes, and Phil and I are just looking at each other, realizing, yes, this is the guy, no doubt about it. And we all just really felt comfortable with each other.
Well, it's funny how you have shared memories, but you end up seeing it very differently. Now, the way I remember, I was hosting that evening at this thing called the Method Fest in Calabasas, near where I live, and they had an after party at a Maserati dealership, and there was a local station interviewing me, and so one of the questions he was saying is, "What are you up to next?" It was in the middle of the interview, and I said what I said, and they kind of came in the interview, and so they said, oh, so you're looking for something, and the camera's rolling, and I didn't want to say, no, excuse me, so I said, oh, sure, I'm looking for something, and then he kind of went on, and so I said, well, yeah, be in touch, and so the next day they were at my house.
I also thought, what would it be like to shoot a film that's a visual nightmare? And not do the typical coverage. So I didn't want to do, and when I say typical coverage, close-up, two-shot, wide shot, and that's what it consists of, and that's what most movies do. I said, well, let's do just one shot that takes us into the next, that takes us into the next. And I remember Ernie, when he first got on set, because he's like, who are these crazy dudes? He's like, when's my close-up coming? I'm like, you don't have one. So he's like, what? And I mean, because it was a very odd way to sort of shoot a movie. But that's what I wanted to feel like. I wanted the whole film to feel surreal, dreamlike. And that's kind of really where it came from.
Oh, man. You know how we've been seeing transients out by the silo?
That's what you've said.
Yeah. Well, Sarah has been speaking to me.
No, you cannot, sir!
You can talk! This is my house now. Just as much as it is yours. Hey! How about we have a little cover to the picture?
Here's a guy who is successful, marries, gets the thing that he thinks he wants, and now you somehow, how do you know what I mean? I think we sort of experience that. We fight, we work really hard to get to some place, and then we kind of, and how do you sort of get back to what was really valuable and important? When he comes out of the silo in the morning, maybe now he can see the world from a different perspective, and maybe now you can let go.
The film that most inspired me to make this was Vertigo, Hitchcock's Vertigo. And it was, that's my favorite Hitchcock film. And so I wanted to sort of do my own sort of homage to it. You know, Jimmy Stewart goes nuts. So I told Steve, I go, the only music that's going to work for this film is Vertigo. And Steve just sort of looked at me like, man, seriously, dude? And I'm like, yes. And I go, just try this scene. So we're editing. And I brought the CD, you know, I was sneaky, but I go, try this. Cut this scene to this song and tell me what you think. He's like, yeah, it's good. It's good. And I go, Steve, imagine the whole film. I did the whole deal. And he goes, all right, hang on. So we called and we got a hold of the, what I was working with was a re-recording. So it wasn't the actual recording, so it was a re-recording. So the record label who did the re-recording, it was the British National Orchestra, and we had to beg and plead and talk, and I had to say why I wanted to use it and why it was important, and they gave us the rights.
Those are actual lines from the Boy Scout manual, and those lines actually exist and are part of the Boy Scout creed. And it's about not letting dark or dirty thoughts get into your head, because those thoughts will stain your heart. You know, there's types of dirt that you can simply wash off with soap and water, and that'll keep you clean. But you also have to have clean thoughts. And it's meant in a very specific way. But I think in this context, I thought, sort of the idea that the older generation grandmother has lost the ability to speak, but you know, Marcus Wells is certainly sure that she's got some thoughts in her head that are dark, and those are sort of clouding his own dark thoughts. It's that sort of like, you know, thinking ill of someone and you end up drinking your own poison sort of thing that is sort of going on with Marcus, that I wanted to, and Phil and I wanted to sort of parallel with that Boy Scout manual that's in some ways sounds so nice and clean and white and 50s, and sort of parallel that with sort of what the darker connotations of that sort of thing is.
There is a kind of dirt after a long day's work of play. The kind that gets under the fingernails or on the skin. This dirt gets on